Welcome to PSY 503, Study Session 1, Psychological Test and Testing. Psychological test and testing defined, including uses. Introduction. This chapter presents the definition and meaning of psychological test. It also presents the meaning of psychological testing and what testing involves. In addition to this, the uses or importance of psychological tests are discussed. Objectives. 1. It is expected for the students to be able to define psychological test and explain what it means. 2. Students are expected to understand what psychological testing exercise entails. 3. It is expected that students understand the uses of psychological tests. What is psychological test? A test is a measurement device that quantifies behavior. Kaplan and Sakuzo, 1993. In general terms, a test is a device that is used to quantify observations made by the tester. A test is used in the physical sciences, agricultural sciences, biological sciences, medicine, and behavioral sciences. Psychology, being the science that studies human and animal behavior, relies much on the use of tests for its studies. Therefore, a psychological test is a measurement device designed to quantify the behavior of human beings and animals. Anastasi and Urbani, 1997, define a psychological test as an objective and standardized measure of a sample of behavior. By this definition, for a measuring instrument to be labeled a psychological test, it must be objective, standardized, and should measure a sample of behavior. Thus, a test is an objective and standardized measure of a sample of behavior, while a psychological test is an instrument that indicates how much a participant has of the quality the test is designed to measure. The word test refers to any means, often formally contrived, used to elicit responses to which human behavior in other contexts can be related. When intended to predict relatively distant future behavior, e.g., success in school, such a device is called an aptitude test. When used to evaluate the individual's present academic or vocational skill, it may be called an achievement test. What is psychological testing? Psychological testing, also called psychometrics, is the systematic use of tests to quantify psychophysical behavior, abilities, and problems, and to make predictions about psychological performance. Psychological testing is a field characterized by the use of samples of behavior in order to assess psychological constructs such as cognitive and emotional functioning about a given individual. By samples of behavior, it means observations of individual performing tasks that have usually been prescribed beforehand. This is translated as scores on a test. These responses are often compiled into statistical tables that allow the evaluator to compare the behavior of the individual being tested to the responses of a norm group. In sum, the technical term for the science behind psychological testing is psychometrics. Uses of psychological tests. Psychological tests are used to measure individual differences on a criterion variable or differences between reactions of a single person on different criteria. We may, for instance, want to know what two or more persons may score on sociability scale. The scores of a single person on anxiety scale, depression scale, and aggression scale may as well be considered. In the industrial setting, psychological tests are useful for screening and hiring job applicants, for selection and placement, for transfer, promotion, demotion, or termination of employees. Tests are also used for selecting employees for training and other personnel development programs. For better understanding of the psychological state of employees, like motivation, job satisfaction, or work commitment, psychological tests can be employed. Psychological tests are useful in the identification or detection of brain damages and intellectual deficiencies. Different parts of the brain function in controlling different aspects of behavior. Low performance on specific psychological tests can be used to inter-area of brain impairment. Tests are used by a variety of professionals, including school psychologists, special education teachers, clinical psychologists, guidance counselors, psychiatrists, speech therapists, guidance teachers, nurses, and engineers. Tests are used for a variety of purposes, which can be labeled as 1. Classification, 2. Self-understanding, 3. Program evaluation, and 4. Scientific inquiry. 1. Classification. It involves a decision that a person belongs in a certain category, like being normal or abnormal. 2. Self-understanding. This involves using test information as a source of information about oneself, e.g., for career choice. 3. Program evaluation. It involves the use of tests to assess the effectiveness of a particular program or course of action, e.g., evaluating the effectiveness of a training program. 4. Scientific inquiry. For all areas of research, the precise measurement of individual differences made possible by a well-constructed test is an essential prerequisite. Professional journals in the social and behavioral sciences include studies which use psychological tests to operationally define relevant variables and to translate hypotheses into numerical statements that can be assessed statistically. End of study session 1. Thanks for listening.